And there we go. Welcome into KC Sports Tonight. Marleah Campbell alongside Gabe Swartz on a very busy Tuesday.
Yeah.
Tuesday. One of those days. So much going on, so much to look forward to. It's funny because the game's 12 days away, but it feels like, we're counting down every single day. We're getting little nuggets of information. Like today, the Chiefs revealed their uniform color. They will be wearing white jerseys, red helmets, and red pants. Gabe, let's start there. What do you think of the jersey combo?
It's the same, the repeat of 2 years ago. So I guess that's a good omen. I know that people are diving into all the jersey analytics of 16 of the past 20
today,
winners have worn white, but 2 of the 4 teams that have worn a color other than white that have won the Super Bowl have been the Chiefs themselves. So I guess it doesn't really matter. I just say that the better team is going to eventually win, or the team that plays better, and what they look like doesn't. I would say from a fashion standpoint, the logo does. It matches the Chiefs uniform well, so I guess it looks pretty decent. I don't know if the red and yellow Super Bowl logo looks great with the midnight green Eagles jerseys, but it is what it is.
It's that time
That's
of the week
my thoughts
where
on jerseys.
We're all so excited, and we don't have much to work with yet because, the Chiefs are kind of on that mini bye. They'll start ramping up at the end of the week. For folks' sake watching this, we will hear from the Chiefs on Thursday. Is the one and only avail they'll have this week in Kansas City before hitting the road to New Orleans, where it'll just be chaos. I mean, we'll hear from them all the time, but for now, we will cling to what we get, which is the Chiefs uniform colors. Also saw today the Wilson manufactured the game balls, so each team will get exactly 108 Wilson-approved game balls. They're exact replicas of what they'll play with on Super Bowl Sunday. So kind of a fun, I don't know, I enjoy all those little kind of nerdy details where you're like, I wonder what logistics go into that.
Yeah. I know that I thought it was interesting, or at least telling of the era of Chiefs football that we're in, when Andy Reid said yesterday that the Chiefs will go through with their, I think the quote was, usual Super Bowl routine of installing everything this week, practicing as if there's a game on Sunday, on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and getting everything going so that once they're in New Orleans, they are just they're not frantically trying to refigure out things, and that they're just they're just replicating things because there's so much more media. There's media night on Monday night. There's media days throughout the week, and I know that the Eagles have a decent portion of that roster has had some of that preparation from 2 years ago, but there's several people on the Chiefs who know nothing but this routine. So that's helpful for Kansas City's sake.
Anytime you can use the phrase Super Bowl routine and usual in one sentence, unironically, you're sitting in a pretty good spot.
Yeah.
All right, let's dive into the matchup a little bit. Another little fun tidbit is this Super Bowl is going to be the Chiefs winningest coach ever and the Eagles winningest coach ever. The kind of tagline is that they're both Andy Reid, which is crazy, and just kind of another testament to all that he's done over the course of his career. Gabe, we had the back half of the Super Bowl matchup. We knew either the Bills or the Chiefs were playing the Eagles because that game ended first. Your thoughts on when the NFC game went final, kind of how you thought that match would be against Kansas City, and how you feel going into a week from Sunday?
I think that the NFC Championship game was pretty telling as to why I felt all week long like if Washington could pull off a miracle, it would be ideal for Kansas City because eventually someone was going to be able to take advantage of the fact that their defense just was relatively easy to move the ball on and score against, and the only reason that I would say Tampa Bay didn't beat them or that Detroit didn't beat them is because of turnovers and a lot of self-inflicted wounds in both of those teams losing at home, coupled with Jaden Daniels making some spectacular things happen. And that was just something that they weren't able to overcome because in every single game that they played the Eagles this year, they allowed Saquon Barkley to be the offensive player of the year type guy that he was. and the MVP candidate that he was, and the driving force of the Eagles offense, that for as explosive as the Eagles offense is, and I know that even in the Super Bowl 2 years ago, Jalen Hurts had he had his best playoff passing game of his career because for the most part he's stayed under 200 passing yards most of the time. The Eagles offense has been explosive because they get chunk gains in the run, and in large part that's Saquon Barkley. So that's the thing that's different between this Eagles team and the one from 2 years ago. I think that it's telling that every single Super Bowl that the Chiefs have played in this Mahomes era, it has either been the NFC's number 1 or number 2 seed, with it being the Eagles and the 49ers. And the Chiefs have been the one thing that has stood in the way of both of those franchises being able to cement themselves as a Super Bowl champion. And the Chiefs have been able to, that's kind of the recurring theme of this last half decade of football, is that the Chiefs have stood in the way of Josh Allen. They've stood in the way of Lamar Jackson. They've stood in the way of Joe Burrow. And the one time that Joe Burrow got by, he didn't take advantage of the fact and get his opportunity and beat the Rams. But the only time that they haven't played the 1 or 2 seed, they ran into Tom Brady on a crazy wild card run with the Buccaneers. So the Chiefs have played nothing but juggernauts or people who are familiar with being there in the Super Bowl, and we get that similar situation here. I think that because of how much or how many injuries the Lions dealt with and how exploited their defense could be, as we saw with what Washington did to them, I truly think that the Eagles are the toughest matchup the NFC could have produced for the Chiefs, and it's going to be, and that's why the point spread is like a point and a half. So I think that the Eagles are a formidable foe, but there's definitely things that the Chiefs can do to slow them down. Yeah,
what do you think about Kansas City's rush defense and kind of how that'll play a big role in, Saquon Barkley being an MVP candidate going into New Orleans?
Well, I thought that Sunday night we felt like the third quarter it was kind of like, man, the Bills are figuring out the Chiefs' run defense as much as really anybody had all year, which I don't know if I necessarily expected. I knew that Buffalo could run the ball well, but they took the ball almost completely out of Josh Allen's hands for a large portion of that second half, in a similar way to what they did against Baltimore the week prior, which I think is questionable if you're Joe Brady as the offensive coordinator, to take the ball out of your superhero quarterback's hands. The Eagles don't necessarily have the same problem because Jalen Hurts is not the same level of offensive producer, or as we said, the fact that most of the Eagles' explosive plays can be generated on the ground with Barkley. I'll be interested to see what the Chiefs do. I think that they've shown a tendency to be really solid against the run in the sense that the best running or rushing performances of the season, all year long, are Lamar Jackson in week 1 and then like Audric Estime for the Broncos in week 18 in a game that didn't matter. And for the most part, whether it was Bijan Robinson with the Falcons, whether it was J.K. Dobbins when he was still healthy with the Chargers, the Chiefs did a really, really solid job of holding running backs, and even Derrick Henry in week 1 to 50, 60 yards. So I don't know. I know that I saw Barkley's rushing prop for the Super Bowl is at like 117.5.
Jeez.
And that seems insanely high to me, given what the Chiefs have done. But he's also capable of getting like 60 of that on one play. So we'll see.
3 touchdowns Sunday against Washington, including that 60-yard breakaway, which was wild. Okay, let's skip on to I want to talk a little bit more about, we're going to get to the Chiefs in a second. We've kind of wrapped around our Eagles preview, but let's talk about New Orleans as a setting. Gabe, last year it was in Las Vegas. Have you been to New Orleans before?
I've not.
Oh, really?
No.
Okay. I'm curious your thoughts on just kind of New Orleans as a backdrop and, the Chiefs playing in the Superdome, kind of excitement going into next week.
Well, I know that there's the history, the tie-in of the Chiefs having played a Super Bowl in New Orleans pre-Superdome, even though the Superdome is one of the most frequent venues of the Super Bowl. I also think that it's, I mean, if you care for the tie-ins and such, Tom Brady won one of his first 3 Super Bowls in the Superdome. So there's a little bit of there that I think that as much as the setting plays a role, I think the broadcast crew of Brady being on the call for the potential of Mahomes doing something that he's never done and inching even closer to the 7 rings that Tom got to, and to do it fast-tracked. Like Mahomes is 29. Brady got his 4th when he was 35.
Wow.
So he is ahead of schedule in terms of that inner competition of the potential greatest of all time. I think that what we saw Sunday night was Mahomes surpassing Joe Montana in terms of second. I think he's pretty much automatically the second best quarterback all time, and there's not really a debate when you factor in what he's going to be able to add to his career the rest of however long that may be. But yeah, I think that with New Orleans as a setting, I mean, we'll see what happens. It was actually, I think, interestingly enough, supposed to be hosting the Super Bowl last year, and because the Super Bowl because the NFL schedule got lengthened with the whole Week 18 and adding a 17th game, Mardi Gras was gonna be on the same week as the Super Bowl, and so that wasn't capable. So they moved it to Vegas.
That would be a logistical nightmare. I
imagine. So to have it here now, it gets the chance of being the site of history in the first ever Super Bowl three-peat. And the last time that we had a Super Bowl, I do remember the infamous lights going out for the Niners-Ravens Super Bowl in New Orleans, and that was the last time we were here. Plenty of big Sugar Bowl moments. I think that there's definitely a big game vibe for the Sugar Bowl.
That was the dunk in the dark moment, right? The famous Oreo commercial that came out of that. So I've been to New Orleans twice. Once just like as a kid, and then once 3 years ago covering the Final Four in the Superdome when KU was there, ended up winning the national championship. So I'm curious to see the Superdome transform for what we saw then, but should be a lot of fun. Good time to plug our coverage. We are heading to New Orleans on Sunday, which is wild. Myself, Mark Palos, and Neil Jones. It's going to be so much fun. I can't believe how quickly it's coming up. And then Carolina Cruz and Brad Stevens will join us later in the week. I think Tuesday. Brad will be down there. Carolina will anchor the Wednesday morning show there. So a lot of fun coverage coming up. We're going to be bringing the Taste of New Orleans to Kansas City. So if you're not able to go down there, tune into Channel 5 and we'll bring you all the kind of fun behind the scenes stuff going on leading up to the big game. It is a jam-packed schedule all week. It is unbelievable. Yep. Literally from Sunday, from when the teams arrive, Monday night, media night, to kickoff and after. It's just, there's constant stuff going on. So we'll bring you all that here on KCTV5. Should be a lot of fun. Okay, we talked about the Eagles. Let's talk about the Kansas City side of the ball. Quick recap of maybe what you saw against Buffalo and some, I'll say it looks like the Chiefs are playing their best football right now, as they have all season. They're as healthy as they've been all season, easily. But how do you think the Chiefs are shaping up heading into biggest game of the year? Yeah,
I definitely agree. I think that the Chiefs are playing their best football. I think that the idea of that Kansas City people and people familiar with the Chiefs who were not looking through the lens of, man, this is the worst undefeated 9-0 team I've ever seen when the Chiefs lost to the Bills, or this is unsustainable. They can't keep getting away with all these close wins. I think that those people are starting to shift toward maybe this team has some championship mettle. Maybe this team is used to the moment. Maybe this team is comfortable in these situations. And for as large as the moment may be in the history that can be accomplished, is that this team is very comfortable in that spot. And they've got a draft class of guys who have been there for 3 years and know nothing but winning playoff games. They've got a quarterback who is going to be playing his 21st playoff game
Crazy. Before he turns 30.
Before he turns 30.
Yeah.
They've got a tight end who is as accomplished as anyone as a pass catcher aside from Jerry Rice in the postseason.
Good company.
And they've got a coach who is 3 wins away from matching Bill Belichick for most playoff wins of all time. And it felt like the Patriots won a million playoff games in the last 2 decades prior to this. So I think that, yes, the Chiefs were able to exploit a Bills secondary that was both lacking talent and lacking depth because several guys were out. But they did it by doing things that they held near to the vest throughout the season. It was a lot of RPOs. It was Hollywood Brown. It was Juju Smith-Schuster. Like, Juju Smith-Schuster wasn't on the roster preseason, and he was the second leading receiver. Kareem Hunt wasn't on the roster preseason, and he was the leading rusher. Patrick Mahomes did something he's never done before with 2 rushing touchdowns. So this is the kind of team that just does things that is needed in the moment. And I think that is something that now the general national media is like, oh, duh, the Chiefs won another big game. That was kind of between that and people finally had that realization, and then they're still doing the coping second place. Let's find a way for Josh Allen to fix another rule, and we've got to pat him on the shoulder with another participation trophy for losing to Patrick Mahomes for the 4th time in his playoff career.
I cannot imagine how frustrating that is, having the same team edge you out 4 years of a Bills franchise that is, literally inches and yards away from, having made the Super Bowl a couple times. Who knows what they would have done had they got there. But in Kansas City world, pretty good place to be.
Yeah.
Gabe, you bring up a good point, which is, I agree with you. At the beginning, the first 9 weeks of the season, when they were going that stretch of winning one-possession games, the narrative was, right, this is the worst 9-0 team in NFL history. They're barely edging these out. I think in the Kansas City space, we were holding on to, no, this team, the glass half full version of this is they're finding ways to get wins. They just know how to pull out wins. Then in the back half of the season, you started getting these double score games that were getting a little bit more of a comfort zone. And then that experience came back where late in a Bills game, you've been in all of these situations all season long. So you combine the veteran experience with the new guys on this team who kind of bring that energy. You think about DeAndre Hopkins, Kareem Hunt, the redemption stories, and the just excitement of getting to this moment, combined with the experience of guys you mentioned, the third-year guys that know nothing but Super Bowls, Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes. It's a recipe for success. It should be a lot of fun. And I'm excited to see what happens down in New Orleans. And, man, what a time to be a Chiefs fan. It's just I keep thinking about the sentence you brought up at the beginning of this, which is Andy Reid saying we'll do our usual Super Bowl routine. Imagine that sentence 6 years ago, right? It's crazy.
It is crazy. Yeah, I think that the interview that you did with Hopkins on the field after the game on Sunday was kind of a good little glimpse into the mentality of the guys who have not been there before, and that there's such a gratitude for the moment and the opportunity. And meanwhile, all of the guys who you would say, they could be complacent or used to this are just hungry to make more history. I think that blend of the roster is really special and is kind of the correct mix of things that's needed when every single game throughout the regular season. I do feel like on this show in specific, we have been pretty able to say throughout the year, there's nothing that the Chiefs can do to match the level of hype and expectation that other teams have to play them in the regular season. Yeah. And that these games just can't match the level of intensity that they're going to get to in the playoffs. Now they're in the playoffs and they are meeting the moment. And I think that's what championship teams do, and that's what the Chiefs have done. That
Hopkins interview to me was just a really good perspective. If you haven't listened to it yet, pretty much he was asked about what it feels like to make it to the Super Bowl, because he's a 12-year NFL vet, 5-time Pro Bowler. He's played for 4 different teams. This was not only his first AFC title game, but now his first chance to go to the Super Bowl. And he talked about how he was traded, in his words, for pennies in his prime, and just how grateful he is for the moment. And you think about all the talented guys like DeAndre Hopkins, who's a household name, who haven't made it to this point, So special opportunity for him. We talk about Kareem Hunt.
NFL Films put out a video today of the defensive guys as P. Ryan got the first down to secure it, and Charles Omenihu's jumping up and down on the sideline being like, I get to play in the Super Bowl. Because last year
tore his ACL
he tore his
one
ACL.
year ago today.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
So there's that's just another example of the other side of the ball.
Yeah, a lot of redemption stories in there. So many storylines to dive into.
A lot of time to do it.
It feels like it. Yeah, 12 days. I mean, it's one of those things that can't come fast enough, but when it does, it'll be a blink of an eye before it gets here. So, again, stay tuned with us. 5:30 on KC Sports Tonight all week. We'll be previewing the game, giving you the latest we know, and Sunday is when we hit the road for the Big Easy. Should be a lot of fun. And but for now, that'll do it for us. From Marleah Campbell and Gabe Swartz, thanks for watching.